So everybody, let's give it up to Senator Nickie Antonio.
I went on, got my master's degree in public administration with a focus on policy, and I ran an outpatient treatment program for women in Cleveland. They knew I was a good candidate, and it actually, I think, helped me win.
Really?
Because the pushback from the community was so strong. We have all these advances in medicine right now. There are times when a wanted pregnancy.
Motivation for growth, 2 toes down. He keep it realer than most. He do it for the culture. That's always the goal. This is Strategic Moves with Kenn Dowell. This is Strategic Moves with Kenn Dowell.
Hey, what's up, everybody? You tuned in to another episode of Strategic Moves. I'm your host, Kenn Dowell. This is a place where we bring art, culture, politics, and business all together, and we do it every week right here on this channel. But when I'm not shooting this podcast, I am the owner of Strategic Resources, where we specialize in political campaigns, government, and public relations work. We've been doing it right here in this state for over 25 years, and I want to make your next move a strategic move. And this program gives me an opportunity to do that. I got an opportunity to go around, talk to some of the people I met. We come in, we sit down, we talk about some of our experiences, and maybe, just maybe, there's something out of it that you can get that will help you in your business or personal life. So if this sounds like something that you're interested in, all I need you to do is hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and the notification bell as well, so that you will know the next time this program is coming on. So what we're about to do is get started. Today we got a special guest in the house who's going to talk a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about politics, and we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on here in the state of Ohio as it relates to politics in the legislature. But before I do that, I'm going to give a shout out to the best podcast producer in podcast history. I gave him the title as the best podcast producer in podcast history. He got a lot to live up to. Let's give it up to DJ True. What's happening in there, brother?
Yo, what's going on?
Every day's a holiday. Every day's a holiday. So we're going to sit back. We're going to get going today, man, because we got a lot to deal with. Oop, I forgot to turn the timer on. We will sit here for 2 hours. I learned that the hard way. So let me turn my timer on.
Now, how are the Democrats faring?
That's what we're going to talk about.
How is us Democrats faring this morning?
That's what we're going to talk to the person that's down there who should know best. She deals with these Republicans and the Democrats every day.
I need some inside information because we got to unite.
Well, that's what's happening. We're going to see. So we're going to get started. Without further ado, I want to introduce to us our newest state senator. She has a new, and the reason why I call her a new state senator, because she has a new district that broadened her horizons, and now she's really, really broad and representing a whole host of people. So everybody, let's give it up to Senator Nickie Antonio to the program.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in today.
Good to see you, Ken.
Oh, thank you for coming in, man. We're going to sit down and have a good conversation and talk a little bit. Tell me, how are you doing today before we get going?
I am good. I am having a good week. Busy. I know people think that when summer comes around that the legislators all go home and sit at the pool or something, but we're out there in the district. We're connecting with the people and really listening to what people have a lot to say. Absolutely. But it's been really good.
So what we do, and we're going to not spend a lot of time on it, but I always do this with every guest that come on here. We get a little bit in your business. We'll get a little background on who's Nickie Antonio. You grew up here in Cleveland. You're a native from here, and your parents. Give me some background. Where you come from?
So I grew up on West 90th in Cleveland.
Okay.
In Cleveland, between Denison and Lorraine at the time. Now it's Denison and Clark.
Okay.
Before the highway came in.
Excellent.
And my parents were divorced, and so my mom was working it on her own. I learned all about finances and how hard it was for divorced woman in the 70s to be able to even buy the house. She had to have my grandmother and my uncle on her mortgage because they would not give a mortgage to a single female.
Really?
At the time. Now, things have changed, but It was amazing, and it's something that I carried with me always, I think. I went to high school at Lutheran West, which is in Rocky River. I told my mom I wanted to go there because I wanted to go to college. She said, you can do that if you can figure out how to pay for it.
Wow.
So I have been raising money since I was in high school.
So you had to raise money
tuition.
to go to high school?
High school. I raised my tuition. They had partial scholarship for me. The churches all got together and gave a scholarship, but I had to come up with the other half of the money. So
tell me what you do at that age. What did you do to
babysitting, cutting grass, cleaning
You
houses,
was hustling.
anything. And you just keep piling the money up in the cigar box. Right?
Wow.
And then you get the bills together, and then you give it. I gave it to Mom, and Mom wrote out the check for the school.
Now, did you have to do that every year, or you got through and it got easier once you got in?
No,
you had to do it all 4 years.
I did that for 4 years, and then I started saving for college, doing the same kind of thing. But then I worked 2 jobs, got a couple of degrees from Cleveland State. I started out as a teacher with kids with special needs. I worked in the PEP program, the Positive Education Program.
Yes, right.
And I tell people all the time that I learned everything I need to know about how to deal with my colleagues in the legislature from troubled youth, working with troubled youth, because you need to, if you're going to work with kids, and I worked with junior high age kids, they're my favorite. You have to have a sense of humor. You have to be fearless, or at least show no fear.
That's correct.
Right?
That's correct.
And you really have to like people and find the good in them, the strength in them, and then help them bring it out.
So was you in CMSD?
I worked for the PEP program, which was a county program, but our kids were from
CMSD? Okay.
And they couldn't. They needed to get a little adjustment before they get back in the classroom at CMSD.
So you took the hard job.
The hard job. It was great, though. I loved it. Then I went on, got my master's degree in public administration with a focus on policy, and I ran an outpatient treatment program for women in Cleveland, drugs and alcohol, for about 10 years.
Really?
Yeah. It's the center is it was the Women's Center of Greater Cleveland. Now it's called Licata Way.
Okay.
It's still over on Storer Avenue in Cleveland.
Okay.
Did that, and then I worked with a lot of other nonprofits. Moved around. I had a Mary Poppins thing going on.
Yeah. I see.
Work a couple years in a place, leave things better than I found it, move on to something new, and then when my kids were getting a little bit older, and one of them wanted to skateboard. We lived in Lakewood.
Okay.
I went to a city council meeting, and I was advocating for a skate park in Lakewood Park, and I felt like the people weren't listening to me. I think one of the guys was sleeping, actually, up there.
Wow.
And I came home, and I said, oh, my gosh, I cannot believe I could do that job. And I heard myself say, I could do that job. And so the next year, there was an opening on city council. I ran, I won. I stayed there 5 years. I ran again for re-election, but then a seat opened up in the Ohio House, the seat there. I ran and won that. I spent 8 years in the House, and now I'm in my second term in the Senate.
You know, it's remarkable the things we do for our kids, you know. It was the same way. My kids, girls was playing softball in Cleveland Heights, and we were, you know, they started when they were 10. Then when they got to 14, I think it was, they said, all right, well, that's it. I was like, what you mean that's it? They was like, well, we don't have no more programs up here. I'm like, what you mean? We don't have a program for girls. I said, well, how long can girls play? They said they can play till they're 18.
Right.
I was like, well, how come we don't have a league that's there? And they was like, well, because we don't have coaches and blah, blah, blah. And we started a league. I did the same thing. I went and got with the community people. Why we don't have a league? And went to folks, and we ended up putting a league together with a whole bunch of other cities around South Euclid to pull that together. And I think they somewhat got the league now because my kids all played through it and finished it out. But, you know, it's the things we do, you know, just little things, how that sparked you into getting that because you wanted to get a skateboard park for your son.
Because I wanted the kids to be safe and to be able to do what they were trying to do, but in a safe environment rather than out on the street or by buildings and all kinds of stuff. And I think
And
a lot
skateboarders,
of
you know how they are. They'll look at a building and be like, "That's the building."
Yeah, I like that challenge.
Yeah, I like that challenge right there.
Oh boy. Yeah, and it's the thing that a lot of times motivates people to get involved in politics, especially women. I'll say.
Okay.
When we sit around and talk with each other, a lot of times the common thread is there was some issue that just pushed somebody over and said, I'm not going to sit back anymore. And I had for years worked on other people's campaigns. I really wanted to see more women in elected office. I just never really thought it was going to be me.
Oh, interesting.
And then all of a sudden it was.
So tell me about that first campaign.
My
What was
first
that like?
to run for city council.
Well, city council, I believe. Yeah. Just go with, give me a little bit of both of them till you got there.
City council, the thing that was unique for me is I'm the first member of the LGBT community that had run and been elected in the community. And I really didn't get a lot of pushback until, you know those October surprises, right? There's always right before the election, somebody tries to pull something, and there was some flyer going around, that was negative. What really just made my heart so big and feel so good about my community was people saw it. And they went around and they pushed back on it. They started a campaign online telling each other, we will not tolerate this kind of thing in our community, the negativity. They knew I was a good candidate. And it actually, I think, helped me win.
Really?
Because the pushback from the community was so strong. And, I had been active as a volunteer with my kids, with my family in the community for years. And so people were not ready to stereotype me and put me in some kind of a negative box because they knew me.
Right.
And I think that's the key to everything. Most successful elected people, especially at the local level, you get elected when people know who you are because you've shown them already through your volunteer work for being in the community, and they rallied. So that was awesome. When I ran for state rep, that race was really the first one. It was really a primary because it's a very Democratic district.
Yeah.
And
that's why I figured that one was a little easier, I would imagine.
That one was a little easier, just a bigger scope, bigger group of people. I was representing Lakewood, the west side of Cleveland. Yeah.
So you say you were first LGBTQ?
Yeah.
Really?
In the
City
Ohio Legislature's 129-year history.
Really?
I am the very first person to be openly from the LGBT community and elected to office.
And you also, all right, so let's get into that a little bit. Because one of the questions I was going to ask you is, you just gave me your remarkable journey to become the first openly gay member of the Assembly. And you answered the question, what kind of drove you into the politics role of that? How difficult is that being in that role now that you're there and in the leadership?
Yeah, so how difficult is it to be in that role? On a day-to-day basis, not a whole lot of difficulty. It depends on what's going on. It depends, it's kind of ebbed and flowed depending on whether the focus was the culture wars, which we have a lot of right now, a lot of talk around that. But I have to tell you, I came through, when I ran that women's center, it was in the 90s. It was the height of the HIV and AIDS pandemic. And so one of the things I learned there was we were providing services for people on the street, on the ground, who were affected by HIV and AIDS. At the time, people originally thought it was only in the gay community. We knew it was in all of our communities very quickly. And so especially through alcohol and drugs and all of the complications for people. I learned real quickly that, first of all, you can't stereotype. You can't just say there's one group of people that's affected in one way by anything. I take that attitude with me every day to the legislature. And I went to the House and then the Senate to get things done for the entire group of people that I represent. And because of all my work with nonprofits and in the social services and teaching, people also, I think, believed that, understood that, knew that about me. I had a good reputation for hard work and getting things done. And so that was the top priority. As far as my colleagues, I'll tell you a story. The very first day, first week I was there, guy came up to me in the elevator and he said, "Oh, you're Nickie Antonio." And I said, "Yes." And we had that 30-second elevator, conversation you have with somebody. He said, "You have a partner, right? Is that the right word?" And I said, "Yes." And I said, "And how about you?" And he told me about his family. And so we chatted and, the doors open, we parted. "Nice meeting you. Talk to you later." About a couple hours later, we'll call that guy Legislator A. Legislator B comes up to me and he says, "Hey, I heard you talk to Legislator A before," because he came up to me and he said, "Hey, I met that Nickie Antonio. She's so normal." And he said, and I told him, "Well, of course, you knucklehead. What did you expect?" And I said, "Well, thanks for sharing, and I'll see you later." And I walked away and I realized a couple of things. One was that Legislator A found me, in air quotes, normal, because I thought at the time he'd probably not talked to somebody from the LGBT community before. He truly, everyone knew that's who I was. Legislator B wanted to tell me the story because he wanted me to know that he was more enlightened than Legislator A. So it was an interesting thing. Down the road, though, about a year later, I found out Legislator A came to me and he sat down with me and he said, "My only regret," I want to tell you, I had a twin brother and he died of AIDS during the pandemic, at the height of the pandemic. And my family was ashamed of him.
Really?
And my family denied that he even existed. And he said, "I didn't talk to him until he was on his deathbed." And he said, "I'm seeing you be here. You're my colleague. And my only regret is that my brother couldn't live to see this day."
Wow.
And he said, "I am so proud that you're here. And I'm so ashamed of the way my family acted at the time." And I said, "You know what? I think you sat with him. I think he knows that you loved him and that you accepted him. And even if it was at the end, that's powerful."
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a hard one to deal with. I think
Yeah.
that's like that kind of conversation, and things happen in families all the time and you hear about it, and it's just really, really tough. The understanding of it, just in the approach of I told my wife and everything, "Nickie's coming on my pro." They don't know who he was. And then I told her who he was. And they was like, "Oh, that ought to be an interesting conversation." I said, "No, it'll be all right," because I'm still a little old school, not in my approach, because I respect everybody, but just trying to understand everything. The biggest thing that I can say that I'm really proud of is that the world is changing so doggone fast.
Right.
And things are changing with everything, not just with the LGBTQ, but just with everything, that at 56 years old, I'm glad I'm there.
Right.
I'm just really glad I'm
Right.
there, because I don't know what the kids and everybody else is going to be dealing with 20, 30 years from now, but it's going to be different. I would love to come back and see or be here to see.
Right.
But it's going to be different, Nickie. It's going to the presidency. You one day it'll be a LGBTQ president or something. You never know what this world is going to turn out to be, and that's the biggest thing.
Sure. And the thing is, we evolve.
Right.
You're talking about us evolving in our ideas, our attitudes, but also I think in our compassion, our empathy, our ability. We're civilized. We're supposed to be a very civilized society. And you open the circle up for everyone. And I think we're at a point truly where I don't know. I think the fewest people possible right now don't know someone from the LGBT community. Either it's a family member, a cousin, a sister, a brother, or it's your neighbor, your coworker, someone. And little by little, because of all the changes, people have been more comfortable being their authentic selves and being able to stand up and say, yeah, this is who I am. I hope you accept me. We are everywhere. We are your doctors, your lawyers, your nurses, your teachers, everything. We're a part of the fabric of the society. And my biggest hope, the most important reason why I do talk about it sometimes is because I want our young people coming up to feel okay about who they are, whoever that is and whoever they love. Because that's the most important thing to me, is that they can grow up feeling like it's okay to be their authentic self. We as a society, we benefit from that. When people feel good about themselves, then what do? They succeed. I love what you have on your wall. When you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, then you will be successful.
That's correct.
That's it. That's the heart of it all.
You know, and that's why they say time heals all wounds. So that's why I say 10 years from now, everything normals itself out to this is how it's going to be. And things change, you know, and you just have to be a part of it. Unfortunately, we got some folks who trying to bend on the change. I'm a lot more progressive than I were before, you know what I mean, as it relates to everything. I live in Cleveland Heights and that area, and moving from the city of Cleveland there took some adjustment. And as the years went on, it took more adjustment. As my kids went through school, the adjustment came because we went from going to school to like, whoa, what's happening in school now, you know, and them coming home and them having an effect on you to get you to open up your mind. Hey, Dad, you gotta know, Dad, things are different now, and we're going to do things this way. So, like I say, it's just time. I think time heals all wounds, and everything keeps going. So let's get to another question, because here we go. It seems like you've been a star for advocating for LGBTQ rights. I'm getting that down. LGBTQ. I get it all together. I get LGBTQ rights. Can you give us a sneak peek of some upcoming legislation that we need to that's happening down there, that's going on, that you think people ought to pay attention to, and anything along those lines?
Well, sure. I mean, there's a lot of legislation in terms of things that are proactive. One of the things that I've been working on, so every General Assembly, which is a 2-year period of time, I always introduce a fairness bill, which is LGBT equality in the workplace and in housing, and just moving around the public sphere. Always introduce that. We've got a number of sponsors on it. It's tough for us to move it in this climate, as you can imagine. The interesting thing is, a number of years ago, the Ohio Chamber of Commerce came on as supporting it because they understand how important it is for our economic advancement. If we want to recruit people to come to Ohio for good jobs, and we got a lot of things happening where the Intel plant and Google wants to add a facility. There's all kinds of wonderful things happening. We need people with jobs. Young people want to live in places where people are accepted and welcomed across the board. They want to see everybody welcome. If that's the case, then they're willing to put down roots. They'll raise their families. It just makes such a difference. And so that bill, we keep introducing it. You know, there's always some culture war negative things happening. It gives people an opportunity to talk about it. You know, the sad thing about all that is that, but those aren't the issues that are the most important things to the people of Ohio. You know, the most important things to people of Ohio are, how much do my groceries cost? Can I put gas in the car? Do I feel safe in my community? And is there a good job for me and then for my kids, right? And are there good schools to send my kids to? That's the most important thing. So we are constantly working on trying to uplift the communities with safety. I talked to Brent Larkin a couple of weeks ago. There was an article in the Plain Dealer over the weekend that talked about all of the sensible bills for gun safety, sensible things like making sure there's a gun lock on your weapon, and making sure that guns stay out of the hands of people who've been convicted of domestic violence, things like that. These are basic, simple things that the majority of people agree with, but we can't get them moved. I think gun violence in general is something that everybody's concerned about.
Oh, the guns up here is just it's just ridiculous.
Too much.
And I'm a gun carrier and advocate and all of that, but it's just ridiculous. I mean, it is just really bad with the ease of how it is for them people to get guns. And Mike O'Malley had a thing up yesterday. You seen that on the news where he was talking about that the prosecution of the young minors, he believes is just not strong enough for some of the crimes that they're doing. That's going to be a thing. He's putting a thing out and they're going to be talking about, because that's one of the issues, I think, with the guns. I mean, they're arresting these youngsters with weapons, and they're putting them right back out on the street with no kind of anything. They may give them some probation or tell them they have to be home, but they're going right back out committing even worse crime. And then you find out that you just let this person out 30 days ago, 60 days ago, and they had a weapon then. And that's the part of it that I just don't get. And the state legislators seem like, I know what you're dealing with down there. So it seemed like it's just, why don't you tell the people how difficult it is to try to get something passed down there like that?
Well, it's very, very interesting, because I know this will come as a shock to some people, but we agree actually at about 90%. 90% of the legislation that goes through, we agree on. The 10% that we disagree, that's what you hear about.
Wow.
That's what makes the headlines and makes the news, right? We just passed a capital budget bill. It was an incredible $800 million of funding that's coming to our local communities to help with projects big and small. It's amazing investment all over the state. We're getting a lot of money up in Northeast Ohio. We got over $100 million in Northeast Ohio. It's going to be transformational, right? Did you hear a lot about that? No, you didn't.
No,
because I think the media likes to focus on the fight and the antagonism, and if is there some blood to be seen somewhere. That's what they're looking for, unfortunately. The good stuff doesn't always make the headlines. It's still tough to pass legislation. Any of the bills that I've passed, and I've passed quite a few, it takes a bipartisan effort. I got to find somebody across the aisle who agrees with me on a specific issue, and then we work together. One of the things I've been trying to do since I've been in the legislature is end the use of the death penalty in the state of Ohio.
Okay.
And I have the most bipartisan group of people that we've ever had on the bill right now as co-sponsors. I have a Republican joint sponsor. We are working together to try to convince enough members to vote on it. I haven't given up on it at this point. And frankly, that's a thing that we should have evolved out of. First of all, we get it wrong sometimes. And there are exonerees from the state of Ohio that we bring out, and they make speeches and they talk to people in the legislature. They talk to the communities. We got it wrong with them. If there's only even one person that we get it wrong, we should get rid of it. We should not use it. It's not a deterrent. People don't say, I'm not going to kill this person because of the death penalty. It hasn't been shown to be a deterrent. Disproportionately, it's used against people of color. And it also depends on what county you're from, whether or not they even impose the death penalty. Justice Pfeiffer is one of the chief justices who years and years ago brought the death penalty back as a legislator. He now testifies against it and says, it's a death lottery. We should get rid of it.
So what's the suggestion? Just keep them?
The suggestion is to go with life without parole when you're sure. When you're 100% sure this is the person that committed that crime. And not every crime rises to a capital punishment level. It's just safe for the most heinous crimes. But we as a society have to be better, right? And again, if there's one time that we get it wrong, that's one time too many, for sure.
Education has always been in the spotlight down there with all of the books, ban the books, and all the other craziness that's going on in education. Won't you enlighten us what's happening on the educational front?
So I think the biggest concern we have, well, there's a couple of things. One is we did change the funding formula last General Assembly. You know, for the longest time, we were not in compliance with having a fair funding formula for schools. We changed the formula, but then we didn't fund it completely. Okay. So we're still working, and we're hoping that this time around, before the end of the year, that we make sure that the budget is reflective this year and next year when we go into a 2-year budget again, that we actually put the money in we need to. But one of the big problems right now is the voucher program has exploded into private schools. Religious-based schools are getting these vouchers, and they took the cap away on the top
choice.
Ed choice.
That's what I said. Ed choice.
But it's there used to be a limit on how much money you made, how much you got.
Oh, that's right. Everybody gets ed choice now, right? That's right.
And when they did the initial study, what they found was it wasn't people leaving a failing school and going to a private school. It was people who already have their kids in private school, just getting a subsidy to pay for the school.
Wow.
And at the same time, those private schools are not held to the same levels of accountability that our public schools are. And so we need a cap on them for sure. And then we also need to make sure that those private schools have the same transparency and accountability as the public schools, and that we should not be taking any dollars away from public schools. In fact, we should be adding to it, because our kids need so much more today than they needed. It's more expensive to educate kids today than it was 20 years ago, with computers and the notebooks and all the things that they need. But if we can give them what they need, they're going to be able to make a living wage, to get a good job, to go to college if that's what they want, get some additional training, whatever it is. But we have to prepare them for that. And so in order to do that, we have to make a level playing field. It's not that way right now.
And I think there has to, I don't know if they fixed the solution or not, but it has to be a way that private schools and these schools won't accept all these kids, get them in, then kick them out, because the first time they get, because like you say, public kids and CMSD and all of, they come with little issues sometimes, even in the suburb. I mean, just kids, period. They come with an issue sometimes, and they'll get their ed choice money, get them in there. As soon as they mess up, you get out. But they done got the money, and now you kick them back to CMSD, and they're trying to recoup the money. So I think that that's a big flaw that's in that whole thing with that. And then it's the educational piece. How much does the state has to deal with the type of curriculum that kids are learning? It seems to me that we should try to put more programs in school that will allow the kids more of an opportunity, whether if they wanted to go to college or not, but more trades and that thing. Yes. Does the state play any role in trying to implement that?
And it's one of the things we've agreed on. Across there's not a political divide when it comes to STEM, when it comes to any kind of career tech, when it comes to preparing kids for the trades and being able to work. You know, even if you want to go into building things, you want to go into, if you wanted to go into manufacturing, anything, welding, we need welders. If kids that want to do that, you still have to be competent in using computers. Everything is computerized now. And so we have agreed, we've lowered the age that kids can start into some of these, a path to a trade, where it used to be 9th and 10th grade. Now it's 7th and 8th grade. And I think that's a good thing. Okay. The biggest barrier right now is getting kids and their parents to understand that even manufacturing is not grandpa's manufacturing. It's very new, very clean in a lot of these plants. The jobs pay great. A lot of times companies want kids to be coming right out of high school, but they want to make sure that they've had some of that pre-training that they got in high school. we're moving in that direction. It's something that we've talked a lot about and that we've funded at the state level, and it's something that we have to continue to push for sure.
Because it seems like I know that CMSD has a much bigger, their budget is bigger than the whole city of Cleveland's budget to get kids, to educate kids. Have a lot of empty buildings where we have buildings where you don't have nearly the amount of kids. I tell everybody to keep asking what's going on. I say, y'all need to have more babies. That's the problem. Y'all ain't having no kids.
You're not the only person that I've heard say that.
I mean, that is the reason. Now, this new generation, they ain't having no kids. They ain't trying to do nothing but live at home. I'm trying to tell you, they ain't having no kids. They ain't moving out. And part of that is, and it's been started, it happened some years ago, where the population started going down in CMSD, and we started seeing that years ago. And it was like people are just not having the amount of kids that they used to have in these days in these neighborhoods to sustain the schools. And it just seemed like, I think it makes it that argument even stronger for the other side, knowing what we're dealing with in our schools, with the fact that, the trades are just really, we have one trade at Max Hayes is one of the schools that really does a trade. The rest of the schools really pretty much don't do that kind of thing.
Well, they funnel them to most of the CMSD kids can go to Max Hayes, as the premier place. However, I am a strong proponent of, we need a trade school on the east side of town as well.
Definitely.
And Sandra Williams was my colleague when we served in the legislature together, and she and I had many conversations. She was really trying to push for a location on the east side as well. And I think it's something we should absolutely do.
Yeah.
Those are such good paying jobs. With a job like that, you can actually afford to have children.
Well, with a job with that, you can afford to have children. With having the trades, you might be able to pay your way to go to college.
Yes,
because you can get out of school with a trade. All of that, and I think it's hard. I got bused to Lincoln West as a kid. Okay. So it's hard catching the bus early in the morning, and we were on a yellow bus. So I imagine if you were anywhere else, you have to take RTA. So the challenge of doing all of that, trying to get through your neighborhood, that's a lot to put on a kid to come all the way to the west side to learn, and then have to get out there and come back home that way. So having one on the east side wouldn't be a bad idea. And you know what? Guess what? You represent the east side now.
Yes, I do. I represent the majority of Cleveland now, and then Lakewood. Right now it's Parma and Parma Heights, but come January, it's almost all of Cleveland up to Collinwood.
Really?
And downtown east, downtown, and then the west side. Then it's Lakewood, and in January it'll also include Rocky River, Bay Village, Fairview Park, and Westlake. And they take Parma and Parma Heights, put it into different districts.
District.
Yeah.
And you're going to get all the west side wards?
Just about all of them, not quite. I think West Park still goes to a different district.
Then you come in east, you're going to pick up Cary. You're going to pick up
I have downtown and the east side right now, a lot of the east side. So I have Ward 5.
Oh, so you got Star.
Yeah.
You got Stephanie.
Stephanie, I have Stephanie.
You have Conwell?
Conwell, part of Conwell.
And you have Anthony?
Yes, part of Anthony.
And Melissa?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Part of Blaine. Just a couple of precincts in Blaine.
6.
So
wow.
crazy.
Now that's widening you out. Right.
It's like,
wow.
It is very, yeah.
All right. So you stop mainly that far with Blaine, and you go as far as Palencia. You got all of Palencia?
Half of Palencia.
Half of Palencia. That's a pretty big district.
It's a lot.
It's a pretty big district.
So every Senate district is about 360,000, although they can grow to 375, which is my district. They inflated the 375,000 people. It's about half of a congressional district. Wow. That's what we represent. Yeah.
So in that, now that you have a new more diverse, you got picked up a lot of Black areas in there. What's your plan of working with that as some different and outreach and all of that, and how you and the challenges, because that comes with a whole nother different set of challenges like we were just talking about. How you plan on working through that?
Well, I move around Cleveland and the
Mhm.
district and actually Cuyahoga County for a long time.
Mhm.
So with this new part of the district, I mean, during the capital budget, I went all over to all of the projects that had applications within city of Cleveland, this broader district, met with folks, advocated for a lot of the projects. And, you can't get funding for every single one. But we got funding in some of the parts of the district. We got the Huff YMCA got some money. I have Huff in my district. We have, there's a number of other smaller community projects where we were able to get some funding for. So that always helps to start out. Even when I was campaigning for this second term, it's showing up at a lot of community meetings. Councilwoman House and I served together in the legislature already. So we know each other. She does an amazing job of, she's always having community meetings and events and stuff. She does a great newsletter. So we get around, we get her information and everything and get around for sure. It's really just trying to connect. Strong collaboration. Councilman Conwell, we're great friends. So he lets me know when things are happening in my office. We let him know when we'd like him to come down and talk to us in Columbus. I have good working relationships with the council people. And really that's the key then to touch and base in the community.
Well, what are the, Aaliyah, get some shots of Latif in there for me too. What are some of the things you think? Go ahead, I'm gonna let you drink a little bit. What are some of the things you think that the public should try to utilize your state senator more for?
Sure. Well, we get a lot of people calling in, but what we do, it's a couple things. During COVID, my staff were on the phones every day, all day. The majority of what they were doing was connecting people. A lot of it was with unemployment because that was one of the hugest questions and concerns of people during COVID, right?
Yeah.
So we are the connectors. We are the connectors for people between themselves and state services. A lot of times people will call us though about something that maybe is a city council just affordable housing be available for people. And it's tough. It's tough because there's these LLCs that are coming from on a national level from as far away. Well, some of them are even international where they're coming into our communities, buying up homes, flashing a lot of cash and then letting them sit and rot or doing a quick turnaround and then renting them out, but they're substandard and the rents are high. So we have legislation. I have bipartisan legislation where we're trying to catch some of those corporate people that we want to fine them big with huge fines so they stop doing this. There's a number of things we're trying to do to make it harder to take advantage of people and make it easier for people to be in homes, owner occupied homes if possible. I think the area that we've had the most difficult time is dealing with rental, frankly. And, there's not a lot we've been able to do to bring down the high costs because it's becoming impossible for people to afford to even rent.
That's why everybody's at home.
Exactly. That's why they're in your basement. That's why those kids are living in your basement. But
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And when you find out, you don't blame them because it is. When you find out what it costs for a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom condominium or a house like that, it's like buying a house, but the interest rates on buying houses are so high. It's like, man, you kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Right. And the most important thing as a policymaker is that the properties are safe and affordable and that people can be able to have a quality of life that's high as well. So that means everything's supposed to be working in that house, the water, the heat, the everything. And if it's not, then it needs inform the public, because I think an educated and informed public ultimately is the one that ends up stopping this.
There was a program out, I think it was called How America Was Made, or something that built America. It's a program called, so I'm gonna put it in the description because you need to check it out. But what they did is they did like the auto industry, they did the foods that built America. That's what it was, the foods that built America, the technology that built America. They did all of them, but they did one on contraception. And for anybody who want to know what women had to go through back in the day to not get pregnant, I mean, it was wild. The contraceptive, everything that we have now had to be experimented. Somebody had to experiment with that. And the stuff they use now wasn't always the stuff they used back in the day to be able to stop that and to not get pregnant. So just like you said, it's not nothing. It's been going on for years that women just didn't want any more kids, or just felt it wasn't safe for them to have. And it should be a right. It shouldn't be something that's forced on it. I think you should have it. If not, people are going to go back to what they have to do. And that stuff was just not safe. Dangerous. It's just dangerous.
And we make these bills that would prevent people from making these decisions on their own. And let's remember, women don't get pregnant by themselves.
Exactly.
So there's two people involved in the decision making around this as well. But the thing is that we can't go back to a dangerous time, but also we have all these advances in medicine right now. There are times when a wanted pregnancy goes wrong. Something goes wrong. It's just nature. And for a woman not to be able to get absolutely every available care to her to make sure that she survives whatever's happening, whether it's a miscarriage or anything, and that she's able to go on, if she wants to have children down the road, or maybe she's a mom with kids at home, we want to make sure that she survives that so that she can go on with her life. There is way too much happening where they're making women wait before they get the care they need because of some of these restrictive extreme laws. And that goes against the ability to provide medical care. That's just wrong. So
that could lead us into this question. Lead us into our close, and we're gonna close out on some good fun politics. So how, with President Trump picking J.D. Vance, J.D. Vance being such a hard nose about women's reproductive rights and all of that, how more difficult you think this gives to the legislature, knowing that they may have a strong person in the White House if he was able to pull this off? How difficult is that going to make your job down there for all of the things you fight for? Not just that, for all the things because they're against everything that you're for, everything you for. So how does that? How you feel you're going to battle that out?
Well, I think the way we battle that out is at the ballot box. And I want to make sure that they don't have the opportunity to make those decisions for us, for all of us. That means we have to be informed voters. We have to make sure we've not been purged from the polls, from the voting rules, the voting book right now too, because there was a purge that went on in Ohio where they just took people off of the roll. So you may think, well, I didn't vote a couple times, but I know I'm registered. Everyone within the sound of my voice needs to make sure you can go online to the Board of Elections and make sure you're registered to vote. If you're not, you can register. There's still time. There's time up until I think the end of September to make sure that you're registered to vote. And then we just need to be informed voters, voting for our rights and our freedoms.
Do you think that President Biden's policies have been under scrutiny? What's your stance on the administration approach to issues affecting Ohio?
His administration, well, it's made an incredible difference, starting with the infrastructure bill. All these monies came in to not only shore up our bridges, our roads and our bridges, build new ones. It was a safety issue, but it's also an economic advancement issue. So starting there, the chip factory that's going to come to Ohio,
Tell people what that
Intel. So these little tiny chips that are in everything, our phones, our cars, our computers, our cameras, everything. These tiny chips had been made offshore, overseas in China and Korea and Taiwan and all different kinds of places. Under the Biden administration, they brought all of that back to the United States. Not all of it, but the majority of it they're bringing back. And so they put all this invested money into setting up a new chip factory. They looked all over the country. They settled on outside of Columbus in Ohio to put this. They are going to end up building a city in that area with good paying jobs and educational advancements and all kinds of opportunities. And then there'll be all the things that have to be, all the jobs that'll come from being around it. Yes, exactly. And so that's one of the key things. But there have been so many advances and so much productivity under this administration that I'm hoping, I'm certainly hoping that it continues. I have a lot of faith in getting the job done the next term.
Donald Trump remains a polarizing figure. How do you think his potential candidacy will impact what's happening in Ohio landscape?
Well,
I guess we will say, in this landscape, and even to this, let's stretch it a little bit on that. His potential with the legislature, but also his potential of picking J.D. Vance and that effect on even Sherrod Brown because of him getting in a race. Do you believe that all of that is how you feel that threatens all what the Democrats and everything is working toward?
Well, what's interesting is Ohio, a lot of the time has had in the past, we all have 2 senators. Every state has 2 senators. In Ohio, the majority of the time, we have had a senator from each party, a Republican senator and a Democrat senator. And I think it provides a good balance for Ohio. I think it's been shown to be pretty positive. I'm hoping that people will want to continue to see that we have a Republican. Our Democratic senator is up for re-election, and he is truly a man of the working people. Sherrod Brown has showed that over and over again. He's helped bring some of those jobs back to the United States, but also to Ohio. He fights for workers. He's been fighting for pensions. And so I really believe that whether or not J.D. Vance has been chosen as the running mate for the president, I don't think it will affect Sherrod Brown in a negative way. I think it's important for us to take a look at and make sure that Sherrod returns for sure.
So you don't think people feel it's more of an advantage to have a vice president and all Republicans in? I guess the Republicans do.
Well, I am sure. But see, in my vision, in my vision of the world, that doesn't happen, and that the Democrats get 4 more years in the White House. I think, and I think the Senate and the House are going to always, right now, are going to be very close. I don't know whether they'll tip one way or the other, but I think they're going to be close. And there's, I think it shows how divided our country is right now, that we're almost like 50-50 on so many things.
So you don't think that what the Democrats are doing now as it relates to this Joe Biden needs to get out the race, Kamala Harris, and to me, it seems to show a device. I'm going to tell you how I feel.
Okay, tell me how you feel.
I was watching MSNBC and I was watching CNN, flicking back and forth. It seemed like Rachel Maddow, Joy Reid, all of them over there just whining, crying, and they're just whine. We're gonna lose. He should get out the race. They going back and forth. And even though it seems like the Democrats are just a bunch of whiners, and the Republicans are saying we're gonna shove this down y'all throat. And even to the point of now, that they're not supporting the president in the way you would think they support. And so when we out here talking to people about we need to be this way, and they be like, Democrats, so y'all don't be doing this, and this is why we doing it. So what's your thoughts on that? I mean, they need to fix. I mean, there's a mixed message that's out there, and it's really bad. And here's even gets worse. The message is so bad that even they can't even agree on Kamala. If they were to say, okay, let's go ahead and it'll be Kamala Harris, then you can say, okay, but they're like, we don't even want Kamala neither.
Yeah, let me tell you how it's going to be. I'm very clear.
Okay.
I'm very clear. All of the majority of the people that are going to this convention in a couple of weeks are already committed to Joe Biden. That's a fact. We have signed a piece of paper that said Joe Biden is my candidate.
Okay.
I am a delegate for Joe Biden. That's one. Number two, Joe Biden comes with a vice presidential candidate. That is Kamala.
Correct.
And I am 200% in for Kamala. I think if we knew Joe was an old guy, he's an old guy, but you know what? He's an old guy with principle. He mixes up his words sometimes, but he gets stuff done. I edited myself right there. He gets stuff done. And if he's not up for any part of this at any moment, I have 100% faith in Kamala. And I am trying very hard to get my Democratic colleagues on the same page with me. And I really think the majority of us are there, they're believing the same thing I am. You know, you got to remember the people that you just talked about are in the media.
That's correct.
And they want attention. I asked somebody the other day, I said, look, one of my constituents came up to me and said, why is the media focusing so much on whether or not Joe Biden misspoke or had a bad night? Why aren't they talking about the guy that is a felon and a rapist and a liar? Why aren't they focusing on him? And I said, I asked somebody from the media the same question. And you know what they answered me? They said, because Joe Biden having a bad night, it was news. It's news because it was different that day than it was another day. And so all we need to do is wait for a new day and a new thing. Right now they're spinning. And because every time they spin, people just get caught up in the spin. I really, when all is said and done, it comes down to these are the two guys that we're going to be deciding between. We're going to decide between two old guys. There are two old white guys. We know that. One who has told us he wants to be a dictator, and one who has said, who has shown us by what he's done that he's doing the best he can to work for the people to make our lives better. I know who I'm going to pick. I'm going to pick Biden every time. And I love the fact that Kamala is right there at his side to be the vice president. She could possibly be the first Black woman president in this country. I can't wait for that to happen.
Well, they say she's polling better than he is. So I
think that's wonderful.
Yeah, they say she's polling better than him. And I think with Joy and everybody else, because to that media, I think they pounded Trump as much as they could throughout the year because he made it easy. He was getting in trouble and everything else. I think that one debate where Joe didn't do well, I think they really wanted him to do so well that they knocked it out the block, but he didn't. And they can't get over it. And they sitting there just whining about it, like, let it go. And come on, now we got to move on. And that's fine. So we're going to move on. We ain't going to keep hopping on. But they need to let that go, all right?
They need to, I'm with you 100%. They need to let that go.
All right, who's your role model, Senator? Who you role model?
That is a wonderful question. When I was in college, I discovered again Shirley Chisholm. Shirley Chisholm, I hope everyone knows, was actually the first Black woman to run for president from one of the main parties. She was a Democrat. She ran for president. She was the first Black woman in Congress. She was amazing. She was articulate. She dressed really awesome for the time too. You have to go look her up. Yes, the movie was good. And she said, but she wrote a book and her book was Unbought and Unbossed. I love that. And I thought that is who I want to be. That is who I want to be in whatever I do, that I do not want to ever make any decision because somebody has money. I want to make a decision because it's the right thing to do. And frankly, no one is the boss of me. I loved that that was her motto as well. She did all kinds of work. She is the person responsible for any of the food programs in the schools. She was amazing. And I actually got the chance to meet her.
Really?
She came to Cleveland State in the early, right before she died, about 2 years before she died. She gave a speech, and there was a reception afterwards. And I was sitting there, and she sat down next to me, and I said, "Hello, Miss Chisholm." And she said hello, and we had a nice little chat. And I was like fangirling the whole time.
Excellent.
I was so amazed to be sitting there, and she was incredibly impressive.
What advice do you have for young aspiring politicians, especially those from marginalized communities?
Get involved in people's campaigns. Find somebody that you like what you hear them say, you like what they believe in, because it matches your values. Get involved in their campaign, volunteer, do all the work that's no fun at the beginning, but you learn so much from it. And keep talking to people. Be visible. Tell people that you're interested. Ask for assignments. Volunteer to be on committees and commissions. When I started out by somebody asking me to be on a committee and a commission in Lakewood, that was the first thing I ever did. And you just keep at it and keep at it. Meet as many people as possible. Learn from them. Learn from people the thing to do. And when you see somebody acting badly, make note of that. Don't do that. And just keep at it. And then when you feel, even if you don't feel like you're ready, when there is an opportunity, take it and run.
My last question I have for you, and we're going to let you end on this one, is finally, there's been much debate about the stance on Ohio Fairness Act, and some undermine religions and freedom. Alice, what's your response to that?
Well, the Ohio Fairness Act acknowledges, even in the language in the bill, that there are religious exceptions right now, exemptions in the law. It upholds them. You know, no one should have to jeopardize or compromise their religious beliefs. And so that bill would not do that. Absolutely would not do that. It was important to me to make sure that we honor people's religious beliefs, at the same time acknowledging that there is a fairness that should be available and affordable to all people in the state of Ohio. We want people to be able to have a job, live in the place they want to be able to live in, go to dinner with their family and not be harassed. I think that's something that all of us can agree should be available to every single person in this state.
Excellent. DJ, you got a question?
I want to get your stance on what did you feel that it was a lot of controversy with, like, drag shows in schools and things of that nature. What was your take on that? And the second part of the question is, when should kids be introduced to sexual orientation or sexual type of content in schools?
That was a hell of a question, Lateef. I didn't even think of that one. I'm gonna give you credit. You, Lateef, always drag out one. I ain't think of either one of them. Go ahead. That's
so first of all, there's no drag happening in schools.
Okay.
That's the first one. There was some there were some libraries that had story time, drag story time. You know, throughout history, and we could go way, 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 way back to the Greeks, to the Romans. Certainly we see drag and actually in Shakespearean plays were done by men. They played all the parts. So drag has been part of our societal culture for hundreds of thousands of years. That's one. As far as children being exposed, you know, I respect parents' rights. I have fought for upholding the rights of parents to make decisions for their children. And in the case of any of the controversy that had sprung up, there were parents who made the decisions to have their children entertained. And I do want to say, I also want to say very respectfully that a person in drag reading a storybook is not sexual. There is nothing sexual, because I believe sexual content is not appropriate for little children. I think we can all agree on that. There was nothing sexual about it. And but the parents made the decision to have their children there. I respect parents' right to make decisions for their children. I don't think the government should do that.
I'm a firm believer on that.
And did you now, what about the age that sexual orientation or anything sexual in nature should be introduced to a kid?
Be it hetero or the other.
Sure. Well, I'm a former teacher. And so there are guidelines around, I will say Ohio is the only state in the nation that does not have formalized guidelines around sex education. I don't know if you knew that,
No,
but
break that
we
down a
don't
little
have
bit.
that. We don't have that. Well, we've tried to put them in, and people think it's encouraging talking about sex, so they haven't understood the policy behind it, and so the legislature has refused to
Didn't
put
we
them
have
in.
sex ed in school?
You probably
Yeah.
probably did, but there's no approved curriculum at the state level.
Really?
So I know the city of Cleveland, the Cleveland Public Schools do a wonderful job. It's age appropriate. Getting to the DJ's question, age appropriate means as a child gets older, there's more discussion that's clearer about whether it's biology or whatever, but it matches their age and is appropriate for their age. Little children, when you even talk about protecting children from sexual predators, little children, you talk about good touch, bad touch. You don't go any further than that with anything. I mean, there are guidelines, there are ways to do this that is appropriate. And the same thing is true of talking about orientation, sexual orientation. But at the same time, if a child is in a family that has two moms or two dads and comes to school and talks about their family, talks about, we went to the zoo this weekend. Who'd you go with? My dad's. That is not talking about sex. That's the child talking about their family. And that should be allowed. Would we deny that child or tell that child something's wrong with them or their family? Because their family is made up a little bit differently than some of the other children.
That's interesting. Well, Senator, we appreciate you coming on our program. You did a wonderful job. Everything that you would like to meet from the senator, we're going to put in our descriptions in our program where you can get in touch with her office for any type of thing that you would need from her. And if you like to get involved with the campaign, she'll let you know how to do that as well. But what we do on every show, Senator, we give you this camera right here. You can look right into the camera and tell the peoples whatever you would like to tell them, what's on your mind, or just give them a little word of encouragement. We take your time and do what you like to do.
Well, first of all, I think it's really important that we make sure that everyone is registered to vote, and then if you're old enough to vote, that you vote. Be an informed voter. Make sure that you vote your values and that your values are expressed by the people that you vote for. The second thing is we have seen a lot of violence. We see violence in our communities. We fear for our children. We fear now for political entities, political campaigns. I think it's really important that we take a breath and that we think about how can we deal with issues in our own lives and show our children a better way, another way, other than using violence. I know for myself that there were times with my children where I told them, you know what? I need to take a timeout. The first time I said that to my child, she was very surprised. She said, usually timeout is for me. I said, in this case, I need a timeout. So maybe if all of us took a breath and took a time out once in a while and show our children how to do that, that we can start curbing the violence that happens even personally, even in our own lives. I thank everybody for watching, and thank you for inviting me.
Just want you to say, my name is Senator Nickie Antonio, and watch me next on Strategic Moves with Kenn Dowell.
My name is Senator Nickie Antonio. Watch me next on Strategic Moves with Kenn Dowell.
This is Strategic Moves with Kenn Dowell.